It started out with lies. I was in a different state than my family. My family and I weren't getting along. I basically had nowhere else to go except this guy I was kind of talking to. So he acted as my boyfriend for a while and then turned into more and more lies and then convinced me that we just needed a little money. And then it went down the line of threats and violence over the years. I think for most other girls that I've seen, it's mostly a combination of lies and violence. To me, now I see a lot of days of guys playing boyfriend roles or acting like a sweet charmer just to get a girl involved with them, and then switching the script. It could be 3 months, 6 months, even a year, and then all of a sudden the girl's in love and feels like she wants to stick by his side. To me, what I think most people misunderstand is that the human trafficked girls are not victims, that we ask for it or we put ourselves out there as we want it, and that is not the case. We are victims, and I think that for the general population, it should be more aware and more education should be brought to them about it.
No girl wakes up and says, I think I'll sell my body for sex today. I think I will open myself up to the STDs. I think I'll open myself up to the unwanted pregnancies, to the abortions, to the rapes, to the brutalities. I think I'll open myself up to all of that so that I can make some money today. No girl says that. People will often say, okay, well, what's the difference between human trafficking and prostitution? And I would say, I mean, there's really no difference, because a girl was brought into prostitution under a lie, so fraud. She was brought in under force or coercion. If you don't do this, then I'll hurt your son. If you don't do this, then I'll hurt your family.
You hear about human trafficking and you think about the brothels in India, right, in Calcutta, or you think about the kids that are lined up on the streets in the red light district of Bangkok, and the boys that are kind of sold on the streets of Bangkok that are dressed up like little girls. Or you hear about Cambodia and 5 or 6 year old girls on the streets being sold for, $5. And so you think of this as an international issue, and I think one of the most surprising things for me in coming to work for the Samaritan Women was just how prevalent it is here within the United States and within Maryland specifically. In the 2010 TIP report, Trafficking in Persons report, produced by the State Department, we realized, in that being the first year that we analyzed human trafficking within the United States, human trafficking not only was taking place in the US, but we are actually the #1 consumer for sex trafficking throughout the world. Oftentimes we view prostitution as a victimless crime. It's one person willing to sell their body to another person. And in some circumstances, that might be accurate, but for the majority of the cases, it's not true at all. For the majority of the cases, you've got a person that's providing the service, and you've got a person purchasing those services, and then you've got a person that's totally in control.
Human trafficking is just the incident that sheds light on a problem or a series of problems we haven't dealt with in this society. The fact that now a 17 or 21-year-old girl is being dragged all over this country as a sex slave and being treated as a product is heinous, but it didn't start from zero. It started much earlier, when she was abused and neglected, when nobody recognized that she was hurting as a child, where family members looked the other way, when the counselors in school didn't know what to do, right? When she starts using drugs or cutting, or she has an eating disorder at a young age, and we don't ask what's happened that's gotten her there. So as these issues become unchecked and they compound, she has just reached a level of vulnerability that merely just makes human trafficking easy.
It would be better if you could just kind of say, there's human trafficking, it's really bad, we know what causes it, and here's what Samaritan Women are doing to try to solve it, rather than explaining the problem over and over again. So you have to bring it down and help them realize that it's in every community. It's not just in New York City or Atlanta or Cambodia or whatever, the UK. The demand that's creating the problem is very tough because this culture is just stoking it constantly. They don't see the cause and effect. They think, oh, a little bit of this on the TV, a little bit of that in the movie houses, a little bit of looking at this on the internet. It doesn't matter. When you put it all in the funnel, this is what comes out the other side, is the women we try to help.
The idea that this is a women's issue is the biggest fallacy out there. This is a human issue, and it starts and ends with a man more often than not. And we think that it's just females who are victims, but there's males and females who are victims. You know, men are bombarded with a lot of subliminal messaging throughout their life. They are told that it is a good thing to try to sleep with as many women as possible, taught to separate themselves emotionally from all situations. Men are taught not to express their emotions, and then we're surprised when it comes out in a drastic way, when it builds up. Things like watching pornography, like talking with your buddies in a derogatory manner about women and sex acts, and the industry of prostitution and pimping, and all of the glorification of these different elements of this terrible slavery that's happening, and realizing that even down to the words that you say are impacting your area of influence. Everybody in this industry, all the three major players, the demand, the product, and the salespeople or facilitators, everybody is broken in some way. Everybody involved needs some form of help.
Someone who is prosecuting this case doesn't even have to try to prove that the victim was forced or frauded or coerced because they're a child. They're not able to consent to any kind of commercial sex under the age of 18. But the thing is that that's at a federal level. And when you're talking about a Maryland level, we have hundreds of girls that get arrested for prostitution that are minors every year. So how is it that we have the same girl doing the same thing, but two different views of whether she is a perpetrator or a victim here? There are no more chains, really. Force, fraud, and coercion, of course, come with mental, physical, emotional chains, but people who are involved in trafficking don't always know that they're victims.
Recently just learned the story of a girl in college abducted and trafficked, 19 years old. It is happening. There is a boogeyman, and he is a trafficker. And I keep saying he, but it's important to note that 50% of all traffickers are women. We have a lot of survival sex going on in Baltimore, people who are really just trying to eat by this point. We have these sports stadiums and these convention centers. Well, what does that have to do with human trafficking? Well, it's a fun guys' weekend if we can pick up a girl, and home games are the busiest days. We have this 95 corridor and the BWI airport and the seaport, and it makes transportation effortless. It's so easy to take a girl from here to Philly to New York, traffic her back down through DC, and then down through Richmond to Florida, wherever we want. It's very, very easy. And this is a very transient crime, and it's a fast-moving crime. Say I'm a new pimp in the area, and I want to get some new girls for my stable. What I'm going to do is friend girls on Facebook in the local area, and then I'm going to watch their Facebook statuses the way a stockbroker watches the stock market. And I'm going to look for that one Facebook status that says, my mom's a B, my dad's a D, I'm so tired of living here, this place sucks. And I'm going to message her. And because I'm an attractive guy, she's gonna message me back when I say, hey, you wanna come out and have lunch? Can I take you out on a date? Because it's important to note that I'm not looking for 18, 19-year-olds. The average age of induction into sex slavery here in the United States is between 11 and 13. So this is a 12-year-old girl that I'm talking to. And because she's not getting love at home, because maybe it's not a stable home, she's looking for something. And I'm gonna fill it for her. And I'm gonna take her out to dinner and dates. I'm gonna get her hair done. I'm gonna get her nails done. I'm gonna take her shopping. I'm gonna get her a new cell phone. I'm gonna say, no, baby, don't hang out with those girls. They're not pretty enough to hang out with you. Or they're not nice enough. Don't hang out with your mom and dad. I thought you didn't like them. I'm gonna slowly isolate her. And I'm gonna make her believe that I love her and she's gonna fall in love with me because she's 12. And then one day, I'm gonna say, listen, baby, I can't pay your cell phone bill. Can you do this one thing for me? And when she says no, I'm gonna say, if you loved me, you would do this. He's just a friend, it doesn't mean anything. I still love you, help me. Because she's 12, she's gonna do it. And then when she wants to go home, I'm gonna say, you can't go home, you're a whore. I'm actually a pimp, and I own you now. You can't go home. I'll be your daddy. You and I could get in my car right now and we could go to Wilkins Avenue and we can say to 4 girls, come with us, we'll feed you, we'll get you an education, we'll have you in a safe, warm place to sleep. And they're gonna come with us. But then when they start itching for the next fix, they're gonna leave. So I don't need to worry about my girls leaving me. Whether it's because they are so in love with me, because I've warped them, or because I've gotten them so addicted to heroin. So, let's say she's addicted to heroin, that means she's picked her face apart. She has had one too many beatings from me or other Johns. A John is somebody who purchases sex. She's basically worthless to me. I can't make any more money off of her. So what I'm gonna do is drop her in whatever city we happen to be in. And now, because she's not in the state she's from, she doesn't remember what state she's from if heroin's eating her brain the way it normally does, she needs to eat, she needs to find a place to sleep, and she needs to find her next fix. Because she doesn't have an education, because she doesn't have any job skills, she's gonna do the one thing that she's been doing for the last 7 years. And then you and I are gonna drive by her and say prostitution is a victimless crime. She's out there by herself. She obviously made this choice and she wants it. And that's the society that we live in today, where let's legalize prostitution because then we can regulate it and then it'll be safer. That's not true at all. The people who believe that are living in a dream because we face it every day. It is not this pretty woman ideal that we see. These are women who are being exploited and abused on a daily basis and brutalized.
So then I went into this time where I was just getting, mad at God. Like, why isn't somebody doing something about this? Why isn't somebody helping them? Why are they this discarded population? And you have to be very careful when you rail against God because it may very well be that that's your call to do something about that problem. So I often tell people that I was running around thrashing in anger about this problem until I ran into a mirror, which basically said, well, what are you doing? The more I do this work, the more I realize there's not a firm beginning. Whether it's with Our Lady's stories or my own personal story. I was a part of a church that was doing an outreach to women in prostitution who were at the street level. Through that experience, getting to meet these women and having conversation with them and having a name and a face and getting to realize that in so many ways, she and I are not that different, was very convicting for me, and it, in a healthy way, broke my heart. So that's really what catapulted me into buying the property and establishing the program, the nonprofit, and beginning to rally other people around this issue. How did we get to this 23-acre piece of property in Baltimore City? The absolute truth was I got lost. I was supposed to be looking at a different property, much smaller in scale, and a girlfriend and I who were going to do this venture together, and we were looking for a property at a related address and didn't know the neighborhood, so we just pulled into the driveway with the intent of backing out and go finding our location. That was pre-GPS days, and as we pulled into the driveway there, we just sat there, and there was this sense of, this is it. And we looked at each other, we kind of said, do you feel that? Yes. And she promptly got on the phone and found out that the property was available. It was actually up for sale, but it hadn't been publicly listed. There was an offer ahead of us for $1.6 million to turn it into a nursing home. And we did not have $1.6 million or a competing price. But because she was bold and I was crazy, what we did was we went ahead and met with the heir who was holding the property, positioned to him what we wanted to do, told him that this was going to be a Christian ministry for women for healing in all of their brokenness, and he said, well, what can you afford? So we told him, you know, if we scrape all of our pennies together, we could probably come up with about $500,000. And he said, okay. So he walked away from the other deal, left 1.1 on the table, and we picked it up. Well, rather by then, I was flying solo, and so I bought it and gave it to the use of the ministry. Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot since I've been here. It's really grown on me, and now I couldn't leave this place if I tried, not permanently anyway. When I started here, it was bare bones. The houses were not renovated. The grass was not cut. The property was well managed, but there were a lot of things that needed to be done. When I came along, I got to see the place grow over the course of the last few years, and it's amazing to see the progress that this place has made, how many people have come through here changed, because it's not just our women that are blessed with this place, it's the staff. You know, this place is built around love and care, and the staff here get that just as much as residents do. All of our volunteers that come through here, they're changed by this place. You know, they serve our ministry, but we serve them too. And I kind of take that as my biggest job, is the leadership and trying to set an example for others so that we may be a light that shines in the darkness, because it's not just the ladies that we're serving, it's the world.
Oftentimes people will ask, what does weeding have to do with human trafficking? I came to rescue the slaves, and I get that. While it might seem small to weed a flower bed, you're communicating to our residents that they are worth something wonderful. Because here's the reality. A runaway is on the street for less than 72 hours before they're picked up by a trafficker. This is a person without a home. This is an orphan. It is not a stretch to say that traffickers, that pimps, are doing a better job of caring for the orphans than the churches. And as Samaritan women, we have tools to change that.
And then I guess if you think too much, and some of us do, then you start thinking about the 18 or 19 you've had the privilege to work with and to walk alongside. And then you think of the thousands that are out there. So if we can plant a good seed, if we can encourage her, if we can show her something new about her innate gifts, that even if she leaves, we have to understand that it was still worth doing.
It's very therapeutic for the ladies to see that there is regeneration and there is growing, and that when your roots are set deep, there's nothing that can stop you. And with the proper attention and care and love, anything can grow in the rockiest of soil.
I just want to find myself and gain my self-esteem and my self-love back, which I wouldn't be able to do on the outside alone because I didn't have a healthy support group in my social network, and I wasn't in a healthy environment. So at TSW, I'm in a safe environment around other supportive women who have been in my shoes or educated about what I went through, to where I could find just peace and safety.
So what are the things, some of the things that you've done for the first time since you've been at Samaritan Women?
Well, on Halloween we carved pumpkins, and that was my first time ever carving a pumpkin, which I had fun with. And also going out to churches to bring awareness, and I spoke for the first time about my story. And just every day waking up and starting to pray and believing in God, where was a first for me in a long time.
So what's a message that you would give a girl who's out there right now, if you could speak to somebody maybe who's still in your memory, who's still out there? What might you say to her to encourage her?
that she's not alone and she is a strong woman, and for her to just pray about it, and if she's not ready right now, that we're all praying for her and we will welcome her with open arms.
Are staring down at me, and I am stumbling. I call you on the phone to tell you that I love you, but I'm mumbling. The clock inside my head comes ticking to a halt as I go tumbling into another country where the warm and fuzzy sea is always rumbling. And I float along in the sea. It spins around under me. I float along in the sea. Said the meal we ate was not exactly right, but still delicious. Then you wrap your arms around me and kiss me on the back while I do the dishes. And as I scrub the magic lamp, you appear translucently to grant me wishes. Ask you for a kiss and you deny me with a look that's rather vicious. And you sing to me in my dreams. You sing to me in my dreams. You sing to me in my dreams.